So, earlier today, I watched a video. It was called Why Games Like Call of Duty Are Bad For You and Why Games Like RuneScape Are Good For You. It's a fucking amazing video. It goes into, like, generally living in the 21st century, unschooling as a discipline. It goes into it goes into what you can learn from existing in a constantly changing world. It's a great video. Everyone should watch it. It's one of those videos that you don't expect to be good, but like then ends up being fucking really good. And another one of these videos which I've been shilling today again because the last time I shilled it no one watched it. But it's Why I Will Always Love Forza Horizon 3. I think is the name of that video. Both of these videos are in my playlist on my channel. That's my all-time favorite YouTube videos playlist, right? So if you want to see those videos, go to that fucking playlist. You'll see both of those videos in that playlist. Anyway, what what resonated with me about that video, although this is not something I'm going to draw implications from, because I think doing so would be misguided, is the fact that I don't really play easy games ever. Like, for me, enjoying a game is pretty much synonymous with being challenged in some way or another. Like, if you look at my favorite games, like, they're Bloodborne, Super Meat Boy, and Hollow Knight, not in that order, but those are just my three favorite games. And they're all really challenging because that's what I want from games. And then when you look at, like, my main game, which is Old School RuneScape, that's that's as hardcore as you can get with an MMO in 2021. You need to spend about 3,000 hours efficiently if you're trying to max your account. Although maxing is kinda unnecessary, as I've gone into before. Actually, yeah, you might not be the longest time Toads might viewer, so you might not have heard me talk about why maxing is unnecessary in RuneScape. Because this is an important thing, because for a lot of players, maxing your account is like the win con. And that's true for me. But most people don't enjoy the process of maxing. So they go after maxing. So what does it give you, right? You get the max cape. The max cape is the best possible item in two situations, uh, unless you're going for post 99 skilling goals, right? And if you don't enjoy maxing, you're not gonna go for post 99 skilling goals. So you're left with a max cape that's useful in two situations, basically, right? It has minor uses basically everywhere, right? I'm not gonna say it's generally not useful in small ways, but there are two places where the item is notably useful. Three, depending on how you slice it, but it really depends. Basically, it's an item that's generally not worth getting for itself. It's worth getting if you already enjoy skilling and you want to go for max. And I enjoy skilling, I enjoy the challenge, I enjoy the grind, I enjoy the ability to engage my hobbies while basically stimming. So it's just an item that I personally want to get. Anyway, that tirade aside, right? It's kind of making me wonder, right? Because I mean, this has been true historically, kinda. Like when I was a kid, my main games were like Minecraft and The Binding of Isaac. And I know that Minecraft isn't that hardcore nowadays, but like when I was playing it, it was kinda hardcore. Like it wasn't like the hardest game ever, but like the stakes were a lot higher, and you know, like when you lost that diamond armor, you lost that fucking diamond armor, right? It wasn't like, oh, let's villager trade to get back. Although that has its own challenges, right? And right now, like, I still play Minecraft in a really hardcore way, because when I play the game, at least when I was playing with No Thank You, I was just like, hey, no thank you, can you please be my housewife and tend to my house while I'm setting up these fucking giant farms? And then no thank you. I was like, yes, dude, it's fine. Anyway, uh, so that's it. But it's other games I enjoyed when I was younger. Like I'm just thinking out loud right now. Like I don't know what the conclusion to this is gonna be. But other games I enjoyed when I was younger were generally easier games, like other than The Binding of Isaac. Like, for example, Assassin's Creed was my favorite for a long time because the first four games in that franchise are fucking amazing. Like, just straight up fucking amazing. The first one, debatably so, but like Ezio Auditore Saga, great fucking games. And I also really liked the Walking Dead game. Although you could say that that's like thematically challenging, right? Because you have to like work through the story and themes. Like it's not like the deepest thing ever made, but you know, for like a 12-year-old, it's challenging enough, you know. But that's a stretch. That's a stretch. I mean, there's also the thing where when I was a kid, I realized that the reason I was bad at games was because I was a kid. Like this was a thing that I was constantly aware of. Like I didn't feel like when I lost at games, I was like, oh, I did something wrong. I was like, oh, I'm literally too young to have a decent like reaction time or to be able to precisely use my hands. Like I was acutely aware of how much I was impacted by the fact that I was just too fucking young to be like really good at games. And now, of course, there are exceptions to this, but I just know as a kid, this was my experience. I'm sure all of other kids have had this experience, but I just remember being so intensely aware that that was the reason I fucking sucked. So I guess that's another part of why I prefer the easier games generally, because like Assassin's Creed isn't that hard. It can be sometimes, but generally it's a relatively easy game. So the hypothesis about Smite's game preferences is that I, at least at this point in my life, have grown to the point where I associate challenge with fun. Like for me, a game that isn't challenging, just straight up is not fun. Which which is an odd perspective in many ways. Like this isn't the default perspective most people seem to have. Like most people seem to have like things that they really heavily prefer and things that they look for in games other than just difficulty. And I know a lot of my friends wouldn't agree with this perspective. Like for me, the difficulty in games does come first nowadays. Although of course there are other things that I really care about, like mechanics and aesthetics and so on and so on and so on. Like even in Final Fantasy XIV, which is a relatively casual game for most of the player base, I remember talking to my friend when I was like considering like getting the game. And I remember the two things that really sold me on it. The first was that old content never becomes irrelevant. Like that's an absolute must for me. Like I've talked about my perspective on World of Warcraft a lot, and that's the big reason why I'm not into that game, and I'll never be into that game. It's because just old stuff becomes irrelevant so fast that I can't even like enjoy the full history of the game. But with Final Fantasy XIV, the friend in question was like, nah, old stuff doesn't really get phased out. You're kind of always doing it, which is true. And I was like, holy shit, that's fucking amazing. And then we also talked about like the end game, because I was like, hey, what's the end game like? And he was like, oh, you have like these multiple tiers of like difficult end game content. And I was like, holy shit, like because this guy is like relatively hardcore. This guy is like actually good at games, and when he plays any game, he plays it at like the highest possible level, right? Like when he plays a fighting game, he's fucking region class, right? When he plays an MMO, he's gonna go fucking hard in it, right? And so on and so on and so on. So this guy isn't a slouch. Like he he beat Hollow Knight in basically like with basically one life generally. Like like he barely struggled with the game because he's a fucking Chad when it comes to the video game world, of course. And he was like, yeah, so there are things in this game that are so difficult that even I don't want to fuck with them, basically. Like, he could do them, but he doesn't want to do them because they're just going to be that challenging. And for a long time, I also was like, oh yeah, no way I'm ever gonna do Ultimates, right? Because it's like the highest tier of content in the game. But it's like, as time goes on, I'm like, you know what? I'm comfortable in this game. Maybe I want to do Ultimates eventually. Anyway, yeah. I'm gonna go to the store real quick and then come back with my additional thoughts. But yeah, I just went through a depressive phase, which generally means I start spending like way more money than I do otherwise. And well, I mean, I burned through a shit ton of my like savings when I was in that phase. But I'm kind of getting out of it and kind of like being like, oh, and I should start saving money again right now. And you know, I've been spending less money, definitely. It's just I've still been less financially conservative than I generally would be. Right. Uh, anyway, I was thinking about my approach to games, and I think the ultimately the thing behind all of this is a quote that I had in a conversation with my mom, which from a young age really made me understand like what place games could have in your life, right? And my mom said something like this, of course in Estonian, but I was like, hey, you're playing RuneScape a lot or something like that, right? And she was like, yeah, like I like RuneScape a lot because she was playing RuneScape when I was a kid. And what she said was, in real life, right, you don't really accomplish things like that much. Like she was like, I don't feel like I'm accomplishing that much in real life. Like when I'm playing a game, I'm always accomplishing something, you know. Now, of course, for her, this is generally a relatively casual thing because she plays like Civ 5, but she, to my knowledge, doesn't play on like insane difficulties. She just likes playing the game on like a low, on like a normal difficulty, and just kind of fucking around. And she also likes like The Sims a lot. So she's not into like these hardcore games that I am into. But she still she does play games. And I think I got a lot of like how I feel about them from there. Because I also used to play games with my dad. But like we would never like really play like anything other than Need for Speed. So as time has gone on, right, my approach to games has always been that I want something to push me to my limit, I guess. And it's just as a kid, my limit wasn't that high, right? I was kind of kept at like the Binding of Isaac and being like kind of okay at that game, I guess. But then as I've grown up, right, I've been able to like get into progressively more hardcore games and actually like be decent at them. And that just means that my future trajectory is exclusively playing EVE Online and fighting games. So I watched another video that was like, how do you defend someone you think is guilty, right? And this one got me thinking. The justice system is really silly, right, when you think about it. Because you have the defense, their agenda is to defend the party as well as possible, right? They have succeeded if they have defended the party, right? It doesn't matter what else happens. If they defend the party, they have succeeded, right? Like the lawyer who defended like O.J. Simpson was incredibly successful at his job. Then you have the prosecution, whose job it is to convict, right, the party. It's to secure a conviction. Again, it doesn't matter what the facts of the case are. They win if there's a conviction, right? Their success is measured in how they can convict, like, a party. Then you have the judge, right? The judge has to deal with sentencing generally in, like, the American justice system, right? Or in other countries, the judge also determines whether or not someone is guilty, right? And the judge, again, at least in the American system, only really deals with, like, sentencing. Right? The judge just throws out the number, like, oh, okay, you're gonna go to prison for 2 years. And generally, they have no fucking idea what 2 years does to a person. They've never been to prison, they're a judge, right? They don't know what it's like. So they go like, oh yeah, that's what the law says, or that's what the president says. So they're gonna go to fucking prison as this law determines, right? When the specifics of a law have to be determined, right? They just go like, okay, let's just discuss what the intention of this law is, right? Again, the judge has no interest in anything substantial. The judge only has an interest in securing their position and interpreting law in a faithful manner, right? At least in what is presumed to be a faithful manner. Then you have the jury, right? And you go like, oh, that's where justice comes in. You have the jury. Like, every person in the jury has their own agenda, right? Like, you have, like, black people convicted by white juries just because they're black, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. So the jury is really just a target for the lawyers to manipulate. Or when there's strong evidence, the jury is just there to, like, act as a signpost for how strong the evidence is, right? Now, is this beyond a reasonable doubt, or is this fucking what's other statute? Whatever. The jury is just there to serve as, like, the temperature gauge, and as the subjects to the lawyers at play. So that too. Like, the jury doesn't care either. And when a court fucks up, and when, as often happens, innocent people are imprisoned, no one suffers from it. No one has any consequences from that happening, right? Like, imagine, this is how I would do legal reform. If a person who's imprisoned, right, is determined to be innocent beyond any reasonable doubts, right? Every single person involved in the original trial is fucking just sentenced to that amount of time, and fucking, they don't even have to go to prison. They're just gonna be disbarred, right? So if they sentence someone to life, and it turns out that that person does not fucking is not actually like guilty, then the prosecutor would just be disbarred for life. The judge would be fucking not able to judge for life, right? And those jury members can never be on a jury again, right? That to me seems like a reasonable way to fix most of the fucking issues in the legal system. Oh, but those smart criminals will walk free. Oh, but those smart judges will favor lesser sentences. That's a matter for the other institutions in society to deal with, right? It's not like, oh, what if a murderer gets off free? That's better than an innocent person is convicted, right? I mean, it depends on who you ask, because there are, like, some cases, like, most murders don't happen by people who would repeat them. and it's just a sensationalized murders that happen by people who would murder again. I mean, of course, there's like obvious things like abolishing the police that would help, right? I just don't think we should have a system where no one gets punished if innocent people are convicted, because that's some of the worst shit that can happen to anyone ever. And I think if that happens under your watch, you should be fucking. Your life should be over. That's just my take, too. So, as I do, I was scrolling Tumblr one day, and I saw this old Popeye cartoon. Now you might be like, oh, Popeye, yeah, that's a show. But what stood out to me about this specific cartoon was how well they used the environment. Like there was one long scene where Popeye and the guy he was fighting with went into like an old timey oven. Now, many of you will never have seen an old timey oven in person, but since I grew up over here, there have been times where I've seen one, and it's it's like it resonates with me to an extent. Like a oven that's like wood fired, right, and you have like a stove top and so on, right. So it's like it had one of those ovens, and they did like every interesting thing they could think of with that oven. You had Popeye going into it, and then they like fought inside it, stretching the walls. Then they had the two characters going out every single orifice of the oven. You had Popeye using the thing that you use to like shake the coals down to fucking beat the guy up, and so on, so on, so on. It was all really creative, right? Because it's not something you could actually do in real life. You couldn't go inside one of those ovens. But in the cartoon, they went inside the oven and they explored the guts of the oven. They explored every single thing inside the oven. And there was also a scene where Popeye just punched the person he was fighting with into a closet, right? And the guy came out wearing a set of women's clothes and then got really embarrassed, right? Of course, this is not unproblematic or whatever, but it's not saying it's problematic either, just, this is just a thing I don't want to argue about. But it's also a creative use of, like, the environment, and there were other things like that too. Like, other things I really enjoyed. And we don't have those things anymore. We don't have, like, fantasies that put that much emphasis on objects. Even when you think of, like, non-contemporaneous fantasy stories, very rarely are they focused on objects. Very rarely do they give the objects in their world the attention they deserve. And really, the only exception I can think of this is Terry Pratchett. But with Terry Pratchett, there's no such thing as an object, because Terry Pratchett treated everything like a commie, basically. Like, he didn't write about the thing that exists. He wrote about, like, the tiny god that resides in that thing. Of course, not in those terms, but vaguely. And I think a big part of that is that the fantasy of objects in the modern world has just become less and less compelling. Of course, this thought process was again initiated by another YouTube video. It was like, why all design looks the same, and I just got depressed, so I stopped watching it. And it's like, it isn't that this looks good, it isn't that this style looks good. It's just every object has been, like, designed the personality out of, right? No object can be allowed to have a personality anymore. No object can be allowed to have those interesting nooks and crannies anymore, right? every object has to be as simple and as uncontrived, or not uncontrived, as unconvoluted as possible. And you miss out on all of those interesting details. Now, I'm not a particularly creative person when it comes to like how a lot of people engage with imagination, right? I'm not the person who can recontextualize everyday things into adventures or fantasies or whatever. But it seems like the world as it is doesn't really allow people to. Like, there's a comic that people make fun of that's like creative people versus normal people, right? And then creative people are like, oh, I'm looking at an oven and I'm imagining a dragon frying my food, right? And people make fun of it. But that really is the essence of creativity. I mean, you have to take a step further and you have to make some fucking story or cartoon or whatever where ovens work by having little dragons fry their food, right? Like an idea like that is the essence of creativity in all of ways. And I mean, I'm a writer, but I'm not really a person with an active imagination. I'm not really a great storyteller. I can just make a story told in a in a in a compelling way, but that doesn't mean I necessarily always come up with like the most compelling stories. And I can only tell stories if I'm writing to you. Like I can't tell stories for any other medium, even if I try. I know, I know. I miss interesting objects. I miss when every single object didn't do its best to not be interesting. Okay, so part one of the video over. Now it's part two, the fucking part that's not interesting. So, if you look at my computer right now, you can see, oh, Toadsmite, this is your old keyboard. Well, you stopped using it, right? You don't have a numpad anymore because the keys have been breaking, right? The fucking left key is sticky as fuck. The A key intermittently stops working. The K key sometimes flies out. Why are you using this old piece of shit keyboard, Toadsmite, when you bought yourself a new keyboard? Oh, yeah, I bought myself a new keyboard. Wait, fuck, I have to turn the lights back on. Oh, yeah. So this is my new keyboard right now. It's as you can see, it's empty. So what ended up happening is I spilled a drink on it, as I do with keyboards, right? And it made the spacebar kind of sticky. It wasn't the biggest deal. I think I've mostly fixed it. Like, it's not very sticky anymore. It could work, right? It could work. But during the process of fixing the keyboard, I noticed that another button had become sticky. Actually, I don't even notice it anymore. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I've made all my decisions. Maybe is it this button that's sticky? Did I just not notice? Oh yeah, I made this button sticky. It's not the biggest deal. It's not the biggest deal in the world, right? But that's only the fucking end result of keyboard hell, right? That's the end result. And why would I not just put this keyboard back together and use it? Well, here are the reasons why. This keyboard is a ticking time bomb. Well, why is this keyboard a ticking time bomb, Toadsmite? Because of the spacebar stabilizer design. So, if I take the spacebar off here real quick, what you'll notice is that the stabilizer is plate mounted. This is a non-hot swappable keyboard, which means that I literally can't access the spacebar fucking spacebar stabilizer. which is the big reason why it was so hard to clean it up. And my eventual cleaning of the spacebar stabilizer, which was the problem, basically amounted to just putting a shit ton of water in the fucking guts of my keyboard. And honestly, I don't even know if it works anymore. Another thing is I tried to I tried to take the keyboard apart to see what would happen, right? To see if there was any fucking way I could get inside the fucking spaceport stabilizer. It's not meant to be dismantled. It fights against you at every single fucking second to not be dismantled, right? And I don't know if I reassembled it correctly. There's a really good chance that I did not reassemble the keyboard correctly. There's a really good chance I got water damaged. And I honestly would rather fucking die than put it back together. I wouldn't rather die, that's a fucking joke. I would rather just buy myself a new keyboard, which I did. Oh, don't smart, why would you? That's such a fucking waste. Well, here's the way I see it. That keyboard is not going anywhere. I'll get to use that keyboard whenever I fucking want to use that keyboard. It's not like I'm throwing it away. What I'm paying for, because I got a cheaper keyboard, right, is future proofing, or maybe even a replacement because I might have broken this keyboard, I won't know. And the privilege of not having to fucking reassemble this keyboard. Oh, why is that so hard, dude Smooth? Well, you see, the keyboard has buttons, they're blank, right? The keyboard has blank buttons. Well, turns out that every single row of buttons on that keyboard is different. Every single row of buttons on that keyboard is slightly different than the previous row of keys on that fucking keyboard. And since the keys are blank, you have to figure out by silhouette which row is the right row for a key. And you just have to guess. The only reason why I got the middle row even partially finished after like half an hour is because they have the notched fucking keys. They have their fucking notched keys, right? You can't see on camera, I don't think, but like the middle row of the keyboard has notched keys, right? And that's the only fucking reason. That's the only fucking reason why any of them are correct. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have any of them at this point. So it's like, yeah, I could keep working on it. I could keep trying to figure out how the keyboard is supposed to be. And I could just keep getting it wrong and fucking get frustrated and just fucking hate myself, hate my life, as I was starting to do when I was working on this motherfucking keyboard. Oh, and I'm also pretty sure that this button here is wrong, but it's attached to the stabilizer because it has a really fucking annoying stabilizer system where you can't easily manage any of the stabilizers. So I'm pretty sure that this button is wrong. I have no clue which one of the buttons I have is the right button. And I would have to figure out by silhouette, because all the buttons are different. All the buttons are custom cut in ambiguous ways, right? I can't fucking reassemble this like in a reasonable amount of time. It would probably take me like 4 to 5 hours just to put the keyboard back together, maybe. That might be an exaggeration. Maybe it would take me 3 hours. And then I would figure out that something has gone wrong. Or if nothing has gone wrong, it would take me 3 hours and then I would fucking have a keyboard that's functional, but, not ideal. And that would annoy me. So what I decided was I would rather just buy myself a new keyboard because I have money and I don't want to fucking be in keyboard hell forever. And if I ever feel like putting this keyboard back together, I'll put this keyboard back together. And absolute worst case, if I put this keyboard back together and it works, so I wasted money on having choice on what keyboard I want to use. I'll have 2 perfectly functional keyboards I can choose between, right? But right now, I don't want to reassemble this keyboard. I have no interest in putting this keyboard back together. Just because of how fucking frustrating it is, right? And even right now, like I'm pretty sure it's wrong. I'm pretty sure this keyboard is wrong, right? I'm pretty sure these three buttons don't belong on this row. I think these three buttons are wrong, right? I can pretty confidently say that looking at this keyboard now. So this is all I have, and all of this is tenuous too. I don't know if this button is right. I think this button is right. This button could be wrong. It might be that this belongs here. I think actually that's the more likely scenario, that this button goes in this row. Yeah, so I don't have this button. I think this button is wrong. Oh yeah, I didn't manage to fully disassemble this keyboard, by the way. I managed to fucking take it apart as much as it could be taken apart. And you know, it didn't help at all. I just had to spend more time putting it back together. That's all I got from taking the keyboard apart. Actually, let's see. Let's test if the keyboard even fucking works anymore. Let's let's fucking see if the keyboard is even fucking functional. Because, you know, that's gonna be a useful piece of information to fucking know. Oh, also the way the way I was working on the keyboard was, okay, I'm gonna work on the keyboard. Then I'm gonna go to sleep when I get too angry. Then I fucking woke up. I was like, okay, I'm gonna work on the keyboard. I got too angry. I went to fucking sleep again. Okay, it doesn't work on this jack, but that might be because we have the other keyboard plugged in. So let's take the other keyboard out. I think it's this one. And let's put this keyboard in. My USB ports are fucking behind the computer, which is annoying. Because, you know, I have to sometimes put things in and take them out. Okay, the keyboard should be, the keyboard is properly plugged in. Okay, it works, Like, it's still, like, a tiny bit sticky, but, like, not enough to throw it away over. When I say I can't even notice that key being sticky. So the keyboard works. The keyboard's functional, right? And if I ever decide I wanna fucking put in the fucking time and physical pain to reassembling it, I'll just have more choice between keyboards. Because I ordered a new one, and that's gonna come at some point. But what I know for sure is that I wanna do it on my own terms. Because I have enough money to not have to fucking spend a whole day in keyboard hell again, right? I much prefer to just have two keyboards than to fucking do whatever the fuck is necessary to fix that one. And I know this is kind of bougie. Right? And it's like, oh, Doatsmite, how are you gonna be the bougie person in this situation? Oh, Doatsmite, I thought you were supposed to be one of us. There, I put my fucking elbow crease in, right? I put my fucking time in, and at a certain threshold, there's only so far money can fucking take me, right? There's only so far I can be incentivized by money when I know that I pretty much have enough. And I think this is true with everyone, right? Once they start having an income, you start realizing that, hey, spending money is just kind of a thing that happens, and capitalism is built up in such a way that you're always feeling the pressure to spend money and accrue property. And you have the illusion, right, Though my last phone still works, but it's kind of broken. So if I buy a new phone, I'm still keeping my old phone. I'm not losing anything, right? But really, you're just wasting money on a new phone when you could have fucking spent the time to fix your old phone. Now, of course, when it comes to my old phone, I don't think it's future proof because I've had phones like that before. I've told people to get phones like that before, and they've all invariably broken. So I don't think fixing that phone would have been reasonable. And I think it's broken enough that fixing it, oh fuck, isn't even desirable. Because I think it would just get broken again in the near future. Because it's primed for failure, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna put any of my eggs in that basket, right? None of my eggs are going in this fucking basket. So I got myself a new phone. So fucking my keyboard, right? It's like, oh, I'm losing so much money because that keyboard was expensive. Like, sure, fair. But also, I'll just have another keyboard in the future. And if I don't like how my new keyboard feels, I can probably return it, or I can fix the old keyboard, see compare them, right? I'm just like I'm just giving myself more options in a certain way. And I would prefer that way over fucking having the one option to be in keyboard hell. So yeah, it is bougie behavior. Yeah, I do resent myself over it. It is it is wasteful. It is playing into capitalism. It's excess consumption in the way that I'm the most susceptible to because I'm not fucking free from tech brainworms. When I see hardware, I want to own it. That's a flaw with me. I'm not immune from propaganda, so on, so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. But I feel like this is justifiable. I feel like I can justify it to myself, and I think I'm the fucking person with the highest standards when it comes to judging my own fucking computing habits. Anyway, I'm gonna go to fucking play Final Fantasy. Okay, so this was supposed to be a two-part video in my mind, but this is another part. This is another part, and I was like, oh, the interesting part is over. Okay, so here's another actually interesting part of the video that I just fucking had to make because I'm so fucking tired of this. Okay, so I have been back on Tumblr, right? And very few things on the site actually make me mad. Because I don't follow people who post things that make me mad. And generally, when someone posts something that makes me mad, I just unfollow them, right? So generally, I'm just completely fine. Unlike Twitter or something, where you're shown things from a million people, and not just things from a very limited bubble of people who you want to care about, right? However, there's one tendency that pisses me the fuck off, and that's the complete aversion to any type of solidarity that fucking people on Tumblr have. Right now, I saw a post about chronic illness, right, and it had some like it had some like reasonable points. It was like, oh yeah, this is a good post. I like this post. And then in big bold letters, it was like, oh, if you're able-bodied and psychiatrist, keep your thoughts to yourself. What the fuck does that mean? No fucking clue. But I'm assuming, right, that what it means that, oh, don't talk if you're autistic on my post about other types of disabled people, right? And this is a part of like Tumblr fucking posting for some people, which is that they really want their specific oppression to not be related to by other marginalized groups, right? Like, oh, if you're chronically ill, right, and you're struggling with all of these problems, then that's completely different than being like autistic and disabled because you're autistic, right? Oh, you're not constantly in pain if you're except when there's a lamp on, or when there's sun directly on any surface, or when people are talking near you and there's more than two of them, or when there's a loud noise happening in your proximity, or when you're wearing clothes that are like formal, or when you have to fucking you have to fucking do any physical exercise at all, then you're in pain if you're autistic, right? And so on, so on, so on, so on, right? So it's like, now I'm not saying that being autistic is the same as being chronically ill, right? Of course it's different. But when you post like, hey, look, if you're constantly in pain, you might be disabled, right? And then you say like, oh, if you're able-bodied, don't revlog this, right? Because what's the definition of able-bodied in your book, right? Are you able-bodied when your body literally cannot take most sensory stimuli that are a part of being in a fucking modern fucking institution, right? Are you able? There's no clear line, because what is able depends on the circumstances that you find yourself in, right? Like I'm completely able-bodied if I get to sit alone in my room in the dark on my computer with my headphones and no other sounds around me. Then I'm completely able. But like, if you take me outside that context, I can barely fucking function. Sometimes, not always, but like, it's exponentially more difficult the more different my condition is than that specific instance, right? Now, again, of course, I'm not saying that these are the same type of marginalization, right? But just completely evaporating any type of dialogue between people who are disabled in different fucking ways to facilitate what exactly, right? What's the point? Oh, we can't have solidarity and dialogue because I'm chronically ill and you're autistic, right? It's a completely different matter. It's different in these ways. So ignore all the ways it's similar. And here's another thing: is a lot of black people post about, hey, you can't compare the oppression of black people to the oppression of gay or trans or disabled people. It's a completely different type of oppression. And now, of course, this is true, right? It is a different kind of oppression when you're from an ethnic group that has been discriminated against for the last fucking 300 years of your history, right? Of course it's different. Of course it's not the same fucking thing. However, when you look at how racists and like when you look at a reactionary talking about a black woman, and when you look at a reactionary talking about a trans woman, you find many commonalities, right? Because the reactions that are born from disgust, and they're born from this impulses to marginalize people, are not unique to any specific marginalized group. The struggles of any specific marginalized group are not specific to that specific marginalized group, because guess what? They're still born out of the same structures, the same psychology, and the same impulses, right? Like, for example, misogyny and homophobia often express themselves in very similar ways, where women and gay people are considered to be annoying and take up too much space, and so on, so on, so on, and so on, and so on, so on. All of these things intersect. Right, and now, of course, I'm not like the expert in intersectionality, right? And I wouldn't even care that much, because the part that interests me the most is the economic condition that marginalized groups are affected by, which, of course, again, ties into social issues. You can't analyze one without analyzing the other. However, social science to me is less interesting than structural, governmental, and economic policies as they relate to creating that society with those structures of power, right? And that is just my personal preference when it comes to analyzing these fucking topics. But it's so fucking frustrating how everyone wants their oppression to be this special kind of oppression. Oh, I'm trans. My oppression is so special. Oh, I'm a woman. No one else could ever fucking possibly get the way I'm oppressed. Oh, I'm disabled. What do you fucking trans people know about me being mistreated by the medical industry? Right? We are all dealing with the same systems of power. We are all dealing with the same psychologists. Stop trying to colonize or territorialize the fucking oppression for yourselves. You don't need to create a culture out of the common struggles that we are all fucking facing. You don't need to build your own subculture in order to separate yourself from other marginalized people because they are marginalized for different facets of themselves. You don't need to isolate your oppression. You don't need to fight against solidarity and shared experience and fucking overlapping fucking struggles, right? You don't need to fucking do that. There's no reason to want to be special in the face of having the opportunity to fucking fix the root causes of the things that affect us all instead of being like, oh no, we have to fix this one special thing. Fucking, if you fix people being racist, the fucking structures of power do not change, right? If you create a society without racism, the structures of power are never gonna fucking change, right? You're gonna be oppressed for a different reason. You're gonna be the only way towards liberation is to fight against these systemic issues that affect everyone in different ways, of course, in unique ways, of course, but they're the same fucking structures, they're the same fucking struggles. Stop fucking doing this. I'm fucking annoyed. I'm fucking mad. Fuck.